So think returning to that, when we say, well, when people have so many different opinions, very strongly held opinions, passionate opinions, then it's not feasible, it's not really practical to expect those differences to fade away. There are genuine grievances amongst different parts of in different parts of society. We've had a very uneven and often unfair economic, social development of the country over the past so many years. I mean, that unfairness has always been there. But even if we accept that differences and conflicts have a legitimate basis, then we can always step back and put them into a larger context. And the larger context is a shared set of values. And I think that this is something, as Buddhists, that we can look to Buddhism to provide us with a shared set of values. Now, if that is there in the background, then divisions and conflicts are not such a big deal. Actually, they're quite a sign of quite a healthy society, and one in which different people feel that they can speak up for their own interests. And there are always going to be differing interests in the country, between people living in the city, people living in the country, between people in different areas of the economy. But if there is a shared commitment to certain values, and I would say particularly in our case in Buddhism, in Thailand, of Buddhist values, then I feel that's at least some grounds for optimism. So but what's really important is that really come back and develop this awareness of what are our common Buddhist values. So and so these have been kind of ignored or put to one side for a long time now. But one way into this is to say, what are our goals as a society, say in a 50-year period or a 100-year period? If we talk about like a 5-year period, then we immediately the whole focus is on economic matters and the sort of material values. But if we think, well, what kind of society would you like your children to grow up in? What kind of society would you like your grandchildren to grow up in? You know, so this kind of big picture about how do we want to live together as a society? What kind of values do we want to uphold and to really strengthen? And what kind of values do we find are really harmful? And I think that stepping back from the sort of the day-to-day kind of conflicts and pressures and tensions, and that's a skill that does come through meditation. You'll be able to take this big picture without having to identify with any particular group or any particular section of society. I would suggest, for instance, this is a big issue, something we don't have time to go into today, but I would say that one Buddhist value is that is a rejection of the idea that the end justifies the means. I think the end justifies the means is one of the most kind of poisonous ideas that's out there in the world, and has caused so much problem. The idea is, if you're absolutely convinced that what you're doing is right, and you have a legitimate goal, therefore you should, certain cases, be willing to compromise on the methods that you use to attain that goal, because overall, in the end, it's going to be worth it. But once you start compromising on your methods, then you lose yourself. I can't say lose your soul because I'm a Buddhist, but you get this general idea. You know, you lose your whole reason for being, and so and this is how we've seen this kind of violence and violent attacks each other appearing in the society, because people feel that yes, well, violence is not such a good thing, but in certain cases it's the most effective means of attaining goals. But this idea that the path and the goals, or in Buddhism the path and the fruit, they have to be consistent. And if you're just expecting sometime in the future everything will work out, and then you can be moral, but in the meantime you may have to be immoral or unethical for the time being. And the question is, well, when do you turn, when do you change and go back to ethical principles again? So the Buddhist teaching again is that one of coming back to the realities rather than the ideas and the concepts and the philosophies and the so on. What's the basic reality? The basic reality is we're human beings, we've been born, we're getting older day by day, we're going to get sick, we're going to die. Everyone else, we're all in the same boat, this is going to happen. So this isn't kind of sort of being an idealistic kind of way of looking at the human race, trying to make ourselves feel better, but it's the truth, it's really the truth, that the things that unite us and make us similar as human beings are far more than the things that separate us. And we just need to change our focus a little bit, and to come back to these basic realities of what's really going on in our lives, and how we're relating to ourselves, how we're relating to our bodies, how we're treating ourselves, how we treat the people around us. And so it's not, for Buddhism is not a religion that says, in the end all that matters is what you believe in. Because people who believe in high ideals and wonderful, noble things do awful, terrible things. There can be few crueler groups of people than people who are absolutely convinced that they're right and they're doing something for a good cause. People become absolutely ruthless when they're convinced that they're right. So we need that sense of humility and sense of not taking ourselves and our ideas, everything so seriously, and being willing to listen. I had the opportunity to listen to President Obama when he was first elected, and I know probably a lot of you saw this when he was in the sports field with his family, and I really liked when he said that the people that he was most keen on listening to were the people who didn't elect him and people who didn't agree with him, and I think that this is a sign of very, very mature attitude. So it's when someone has very different opinions to you, then not dismissing them as idiots or being selfish or having some kind of hidden agenda, but giving actually more attention, more respect, more time to the people who don't agree with you than to the people that do agree with you. Otherwise it's just like preaching to the converted and you're just hearing the same things over and over again. And this, again, some years ago, many years ago, governments controlled all the media. And so it's very easy for governments to mold and to decide, on the interpretation of events. And I remember some 20 years ago being in Ubon, and there was it's like a war going on in the border. There were hundreds of Thai soldiers who were killed and injured, and that was never ever reported in any of the media or the paper. You could do things like that 20 years ago. You could have like hundreds of soldiers die and nobody know about it. But you can't do that anymore. That's a good thing. But with the liberalization of the media and with small video cameras and camera phones and all these new technologies, there's that much more information out there. But what's happened is that now, rather than people opening up and becoming more broad-minded, people choose the the TV stations, the blogs,